Okay, do I have everything? Do I have everything? I think I do. I think. And if we don't, that's okay, because we're gonna go ahead and get started. Greetings, my beautiful lovelies. It's Emmy. How are you? It's great to see you and welcome back to my kitchen. Today, I'm going to be making homemade crackers. A few of you have gotten in touch with me requesting that I make homemade crackers due to supply chain shortages in your area of the woods. So in my area, I have noticed that there have been holes on the shelves. Some products have been missing, and that's sort of been the case for the last few months. For a little while, it was cream cheese, but I am happy to say cream cheese has reappeared on our dairy shelves, at least on our neck of the woods. Other people were happy to tell me that they had no shortage of cream cheese whatsoever, which is just great. And others have said they too had cream cheese shortages. And now I have heard that there are cracker shortages, all different kinds of crackers. And I'm here to make a very simple, plain soda cracker or saltines. I don't know what you call them depending where you live. I happen to call them saltines. They are the square crackers that are light and airy, have a very plain taste to them. You dip them into your soup. You have them with a little bit of cheese. You smear them with a little bit of peanut butter. They come in sleeves in a 4-pack. I think most of you may know what a saltine cracker is, although you may not call it that. Apparently other people call it soda crackers, but they are pretty ubiquitous. I think pretty much all over the world you can find this plain version of a cracker. For me, it is the crunch that I love so much, that little bit of salt on top. I think most of us know what it's like to eat a stale cracker, and it's just not quite the same. You know, when you've opened the sleeve and you've let it sit, particularly if it's been a humid day, and a couple days later you go back for those little crackers and they're just a little bit, they don't have that really light crunch. Yes, well, I'm going to be attempting to try to make homemade crackers. For those of you that don't have crackers on your shelves, you can make them for yourself. I'll be using a recipe that I found from restlesschipotle.com, and I'll put a link down below to the original in case you are interested. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Behind me, I have my oven preheated at 325 degrees. Now, according to this recipe, I should be able to prepare these crackers in about a half an hour with very minimal ingredients, probably ingredients you already have. Win-win. And it's about 5 or 6 ingredients. 6 ingredients if you include the salt. Now, I am opting to go for a very plain cracker, but if you want to add cheese, if you want to add black pepper, if you want to add any herbs and spices, feel free to do that and make these crackers your own. But I'm just going for the run-of-the-mill plain cracker today. So, in a large bowl, I'm going to measure out 4 cups of plain all-purpose flour. Look at this container, isn't it great? I found this at a thrift store. It just popped open because I'd knocked the latch. And it is a Community Kitchen's Fresh-O-Lator. Look at that. Can you see that? It says Fresh-O-Lator. Isn't that cool? I love old vintage stuff like this. And this is the selling point for me. Right here on this latch, right there, it says press it down here. Can you see that? It's so cool. It's like etched in here. Apparently this was used to hold coffee. And listen to this. It has a little gasket on the inside here, so it keeps moisture out, but it's a super tight fit. Oh, that latch is just such a pleasure. Alrighty, now that I've showed you my flour container, I'm gonna measure out 4 cups. Now the reason why I like a nice wide container for my flour is that I can actually put my measuring cup in there. So I learned from King Arthur Flour that this is the correct way to measure out your flour. Like this. Oops. You sprinkle the flour into the measuring container and slide off the top so it's nice and even. In my opinion, the best way to measure out flour is by weight. But we're not doing it by weight today because the recipe calls for volumetric measure. So that's what we're doing. Alrighty. 4 cups of flour into our bowl. And to that, we're going to add our butter. This is butter out of the refrigerator. And if you have a pastry blender, feel free to use it. I don't, so I'm just using this little bench scraper to cut the butter in initially and chop it up into small pieces. And then I'm just going to use my hands to crumble the butter in till it is kind of cornmeal in consistency, kind of like we're making a pie crust. I think at this point I'm going to go in with my hands and start squeezing this and getting that butter incorporated. This is going to add a ton of flavor. I don't have a pack of saltine crackers in front of me, so I don't know if they contain any butter. I imagine they don't. They don't taste particularly buttery to me. In my opinion, they just taste kind of flaky and salty and plain, just plain crackers. But this recipe calls for butter, so I'm guessing these are going to be a little bit tastier. See, never fails. We're in something dark while I'm baking, and I'm pushing up my glasses. Speaking of glasses, these glasses come from glassesusa.com. Many of you ask where I get my glasses, and that's where these are from. So I'll put a link down below in case you're interested. Alrighty, keep cutting these in. I actually have a little, because I don't have much of a nose bridge, I found these great little, what would you call them? I don't know, rubbery doohickeys that I can put on the ends of the glasses, the arms of the glasses, I think are the technical words, and they kind of grip behind your ear so that when you look down or move your head around a lot, your glasses don't slide off your nose. Isn't that great? So I don't have a pair put on these glasses yet, although these don't seem to need them that badly. Although the summertime is the worst, like when my nose is a little bit sweaty. Okay, this is all a little bit TMI, sorry. Okay, back to this. Crumble, crumble, crumble. So to give this a little bit of lift, we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of baking powder to this. And now we're gonna add our milk and form this into a dough. Get our impeccably clean hand in there and work this into a dough. Now this recipe says it makes about 36 crackers, but of course that's going to depend on the size of your crackers. I'm going to go for the, square shape of a saltine. So we're just going to knead this. We're not necessarily trying to develop any gluten here. We're not making bread. We just want to get the flour and milk incorporated to form a dough. Ready, we have our dough here, and to make things a little bit easier on ourselves, we're going to divide this into quarters. Divide this into quarters. And then reserve the rest of this for later. That will make it a little bit more manageable. Now, at this point, we can roll this out nice and thinly. Now I'm going to try to keep this as a rectangle if I can, and dust it with flour as we need so that it doesn't stick. But as of now, I don't think I'm going to need it. Now, if you're having a hard time rolling out your dough, you might just want to let it rest a little bit. The gluten or the protein in the flour sometimes needs a little bit of time to relax. And with that time, the dough will hold its shape better rather than kind of wanting to shrink back. So the thinner we make our dough, the thinner, of course, our crackers are going to be, but more importantly, they'll be nice and crisp and light. So I'm going to try to get this pretty thin. Now, when I was making hardtack, this wasn't as important because we wanted the opposite. Rather than having a flaky, fall apart, crusty, crispy cracker, we wanted something that was thick and substantial. I'm going to be using this little fluted cutter. It looks like a pizza cutter, but it's got these nice little ridges so that it'll give us a nice little pretty pattern. And I'll use a ruler for a straight edge. So I'm gonna straighten this edge off here. Ooh, I've never used this tool before. Very nice. Like that. Whoop. Cute. Ooh, that makes such a nice sound. Like that. Ooh, yeah, like that, like that. And then another 2.5 inches. Bloop. There's no need to measure here. I'm just being a little extra, so feel free to make these nice and rectangular or odd shaped, you know, don't have to do this. There it is. It almost looks like a ravioli with no oli, right? Okay, now we're gonna place that onto an ungreased cookie sheet. And then I'm gonna do that for the rest of these. I'll be right back. Okay. Now I'm gonna grab a fork and we're going to prick the dough. And this is going to help keep the crackers from rising too much in the oven. Can you see that? We want to keep our crackers nice and flat. And I am doing a total of 8 little prick points. See that? Cool. Now we need to attach our salt. And what we're going to do is make an egg wash. Well, we're just using the white. So separate our yolk, which we'll put to good use. And then add about a teaspoon of water to that. Sorry for the noise. Then I've got some salt here, just plain old kosher salt. And I'm going to brush each cracker with a little bit of egg white. And sprinkle it with some salt. And then we're going to pop these into a preheated 325-degree oven and bake for 15 to 20 minutes, but start checking them around 10 minutes. And once they start to golden and look nice and crispy, we'll pull them out and allow them to cool completely before we taste them. It's important to allow them to cool completely because that allows them to get nice and crispy. Alrighty, I'll see you when all these are nicely baked and we'll give these a taste. Okay, see you in a little bit. Alrighty, my lovelies, my crackers are complete. I baked them for about 17 minutes. And even though I pricked them beforehand, a couple of them still kind of poofed up. That one back there, and then this one right in the corner. Looks a little bit like a turnover, but there are my finished crackers. I baked them in 2 different batches. The first batch was a little bit lighter than the second. We'll see how that affects the color. And these are the little scraps that I cut up and then baked these as well. These were super cute. Loved how these turned out. Kind of like a homemade version of an oyster cracker. A little bit more golden though. And as you can hear, they sound crispy. Those ones are so cute. I love those. Alrighty, so let's give one of the big ones a taste. I'm gonna taste this one first. This is a lighter version here. This is kind of more the color of the typical saltine cracker that you would buy in the sleeve. And after I baked them, these are a little bit large, I would say. If you want them to be more saltine cracker in size, I'd say more like 2 inches by 2 inches square, but still pretty close. Let's crack it open and see what the texture is like. Alrighty, I hope this is crispy. Here we go. Ooh, not quite. So it cracked on the top, but the bottom didn't have that nice kind of chatterly, like thin crust that I associate with a saltine. Let's break it again. Yeah, it doesn't have that big snap. But the inside looks pretty good. Alrighty, let's give that a taste. Here we go. Itadakimasu. Nope. That definitely needs to be baked longer. It's a little bit doughy at the bottom. The taste is pretty good. Very kind of neutral, plain taste to it. Very similar to a saltine, but slightly buttery. I think the salt level was pretty good. Make sure you add enough salt because these are saltines, these soda crackers. But this definitely is a little underbaked. Now this was the first time, for me, this recipe, the first time I baked it, this was the first batch. So I wasn't sure how to get long to cook these for. It said anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. I did 17 minutes. The second batch I did a little bit longer to get a little bit more of a golden color. And let's try one of those. For example, this one right here. That one has more of a golden color to it and it feels lighter. So let's break this one. Here we go. Oh, this one too has a slightly kind of doughy interior, but the flakiness looks good. All right, let's try that one. That one's definitely better. I think this recipe does a pretty good job in capturing that saltine flavor, the kind of just plain, floury, bland greatness of a saltine with a little bit of butter in it, which is very welcomed. Just the texture's not quite right. And this was definitely baked long enough. Perhaps I need to roll these out thinner. These do look a little bit thick. So this one looks pretty good. Let's try that one. Yeah, so initially the crunch looks good, but I think, see how it was kind of bready at the bottom? Again, good flavor, but texture's not quite right. Let's try the little ones. Look at these. These look really crispy and they sound really crispy. Let's try one of those. Here we go. Yes. 100% yes. So those have a nice little nutty toasted flavor to them. The texture is much more cracker-like, although not quite like a saltine. When I imagine a saltine soda cracker, imagine one that's really flaky and crumbly and thin. Not thin, but like a layered kind of flakiness. These are more of like a biscuit, American style biscuit. Kind of like that style of cookie biscuit, where it's a little bit more like the hardtack I was talking about earlier, a little more solid, kind of a little bit like an animal cracker. Some of those animal crackers have a little bit more density to them, and that's what these are like. But this definitely has a crunch of a cracker. And the dryness. While the bigger size seem a little bit wet still. And these were baked right alongside the larger ones. This was the second batch. I baked these for 18 minutes at 325 degrees. All ovens are going to be a little bit different. If you have a convection oven, you're going to reduce that down to 300 and bake them as opposed to 325. So, moral of the story here is I think the smaller size crackers worked better in terms of getting that really great crisp texture. The flavor is pretty good. Very plain cracker. Texture isn't quite the texture of a saltine. Having said that, I think this would be a great cracker to have along with the soup or with a little bit of cheese. I think it's all about perfecting the proper size. If I were to do this again, I think I would try baking them on a rack so that the air can get underneath the cracker and they're less likely to be soggy on the bottom. Or roll these out thinner and see if you get a more crisper cracker that way. Definitely think that would be the case. That's just going to take a little bit more time. Alrighty, my lovelies, there you have it. That's how you can make homemade crackers. It's definitely possible. It's not hard. I think it's just a matter of finding the right time and temperature in your oven and the correct thickness of your dough. Very, very thin. Thinner than I had done it if you really want a really crisp cracker, which I thought was pretty thin already. Also, the recipe said not to grease your pan. I would go ahead and set your crackers onto a piece of parchment paper, which I did for my second batch, because my first batch did want to stick just a little bit. I mean, it wasn't enough to break any of the crackers when I removed them, but there was some hesitation. So just put a little piece of parchment there. I think if you were to add butter or something to grease the actual pan, it might affect the browning. It might make these a little bit darker than you might want. So yeah, those are my tips. And yeah, you can make yourself homemade crackers at home. You could also dust these with cheesy powder, black pepper. Oh, I think adding black pepper to the actual dough would be lovely. Or just a little bit of Parmesan cheese if you like. Or, herb them up however you want. Or you could actually put some cheese in the dough itself to make your own cheesy crackers. I've seen some recipes for cheese straws and things like that. Didn't want to do that with this one because I just wanted a plain cracker. Alrighty, my lovelies. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you learned something. Please share this video with your friends. Follow me on social media. Like this video, subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Toodaloo. Take care. Bye. Let's see if I can catch it.